in a room containing himself, Do, and a tube inserted into Mew's arm. Blood was constantly flowing out from under his skin, channeled through the tube and placed into a large glass. The glass was full of Mew's blood twice already. This was the third glass and Mew was still lying on the bed. Is this for Golf again? Do asked, who had been sitting on the sofa, intensely watching every drop of Mew's blood leaking out from under his skin. It made him cringe. What do you think? Mew replied sarcastically. Who else could it be for but Golf? Okay, just relax. It's your fault. You know that Golf will be anemic every time you touch him, but you still rape him. You're crazy, insane. You're so stressed. Do mocked. Mew just stared sharply at Do, then refocused on the tube inserted into his skin. Without any caution, he pulled the tube out of his arm, causing the remaining blood to spill on the bed. Do, seeing Mew's action, just shook his head. You're looking for death. Mew ignored him. He took the glass full of his blood from the tray. Then Mew sat on the sofa in front of Do. How's Mr. Lee? Have you been able to make an appointment with him? Mew asked, sipping his wine as usual. He's arrogant. I haven't gotten to him yet. The guards in his house are too numerous. I have a new task for you. What? Do said happily. Mew showed a photo on his phone. Find out about his personal data, his family, and also... Wait, Do said, seeing Boren's photo on Mew's phone. Isn't he the guy who always wants to arrest you? Mew was silent, still not understanding what Do was saying. You forgot. You killed his family. Me? That's why you shouldn't just randomly kill people, Do said sharply. Mew ignored him. His name is Boren, but I forget his full name. He was assigned to arrest you about 3 to 4 years ago. You were at a bar back then. Then you got drunk on your way back and accidentally got pulled over by the police. And that cop was Boren. He searched your car and found drugs in your pants pocket. Don't you remember? Mew slowly shook his head, furrowing his brow. Why would you take drugs just to vent your longing for Golf? Do stopped speaking when he saw Mew looking at him sharply. I'm just kidding, Do said. Continue the story you were telling. So, back then you almost bit the cop's hand. Maybe that's why he's always been curious about you. He even suspects you. Do exhaled before continuing his words. Then you swerved and hit several drivers, causing a chain accident. But luckily, you managed to escape. And unfortunately, the cop kept trying to catch you until you couldn't take it anymore because you were constantly under suspicion. You killed his family, and because of that, this Boren guy kept chasing you, even following you to America, Korea, Italy. He almost knew your house. Oh, what? Just oh. Isn't there any other reaction that makes me feel like I didn't waste my time retelling your story? No, you're a jerk. Mew ignored him, continued drinking wine, took a newspaper, and started reading. Hey, by the way, how's Alicia? Mew looked at Du sharply. Nothing personal, but don't you feel suspicious about Alicia's father's reaction to Golf? Mew put his drink back on the table. Find out about Golf's family's personal data, Mew said, then immediately left Du's office without waiting for an answer. Golf slowly opened his eyes. His vision was still blurry. He tried to hold onto the drawer near him to help him stand and sit on his bed. It was too quiet. Even the sound of raindrops outside couldn't be heard. But Golf felt cold inside the room. Was it his body that was sick, or was the room too soundproof? He held his head with both hands, trying to focus his vision, but he couldn't. He slowly dropped his feet to touch the floor. Then, with the help of the wall, he walked slowly towards the window, which was covered with curtains. His head still felt wobbly. He held onto the wall until he reached the window. He tried to open the curtains, but they were too difficult and heavy. After several attempts, he managed to open the curtain. Now, his room was filled with light from outside. He tried to open the window, but he couldn't. He also banged on the window, but it wouldn't break either. The window glass was too thick. It was clear that he couldn't hear sounds from outside the window, and his head felt heavier. He fell under the window, landing on the floor, clutching his head. He tried to get back up but couldn't. His body was too weak to force himself to stand up. Gulf curled his legs up to his head. He couldn't bear the pain that kept hammering at his head. Gulf, Mew, who had just arrived carrying a tray of drinks, immediately placed the tray on the table and went to Gulf. Gulf's body was cold, but when Mew touched his forehead, it was very hot. He carried Gulf like a koala, then sat him down on the sofa, trying to keep Gulf balanced so he wouldn't fall from his arms. Mew held onto the back of his neck. He looked at Gulf's pale face, who was closing his eyes. Then, Mew took a glass from the tray and drank from it. Immediately, he kissed Gulf's lips, channeling the blood from his mouth into Gulf's mouth. The first glass, Gulf still couldn't open his eyes completely. He just opened his eyes slightly a few times, then they closed again. Mew took another glass and did the same thing, kissing Gulf's lips and channeling the blood again. The second glass, Gulf started to become semi-conscious, until Mew was about to drink the last glass. But Gulf turned away, trying to avoid Mew's kiss. Mew held Gulf's chin, forcing him to face forward. He kissed Gulf again and transferred the blood. Gulf struggled a little, patting Mew's shoulder lightly as his strength still hadn't fully recovered. Once he was sure that Gulf had swallowed the blood, Mew broke the kiss. Their clothes were stained red with blood after they finished kissing. "Look at me." Mew tried to focus Gulf's vision. "Gulf, look at me. Don't close your eyes. My head is pounding." Gulf murmured softly, making it almost inaudible to Mew. Mew walked towards the wardrobe again, still carrying Gulf, and took a small 5 centimeters bottle of medicine. Then he walked towards the sofa and sat down. He opened the bottle and took a pill. "No, I don't like taking pills." Gulf turned his face away, hiding it against Mew's neck. "I'll take it for you." "So, look at me," Mew coaxed, gently stroking Gulf's neck. Finally, Gulf obeyed. He looked at Mew and there was already a pill sticking to the edge of Mew's mouth. Mew immediately swallowed the pill, then suddenly kissed Gulf's lips, making him very surprised. Gulf tried to close his mouth tightly, but Mew had already licked his tongue and put the pill in his mouth until Gulf accidentally swallowed it. "You crazy!" Gulf scolded when Mew broke the kiss, having successfully made him swallow the medicine. Mew just smiled. He took a glass of water and handed it to Gulf. "Do you want to drink it yourself, or do you want me to feed you?" Mew teased, making Gulf even more annoyed. Gulf furrowed his brow, then rudely took the glass from Mew's hand and drank it. "Does it taste sweet?" Mew asked. "Sweet what? It's very bitter, you idiot," Gulf said after he finished drinking the water. Mew chuckled, then pinched Gulf's cheek. "You're so grown up now, yet you're still afraid of taking medicine," he teased. Mew rolled his eyes, annoyed. He pushed Gulf's shoulder and got off his lap. "I'm not scared, it's just I've never taken pills like that." Really? Mew teased with a satisfied smile. You don't believe me. Mew walked towards Gulf and wrapped his arms around his waist, making their chests touch. Have I ever doubted your words? Mew teased again, still not satisfied, even though Gulf's face was already blushing. You, let go, let go. Gulf, annoyed, started to struggle again to get out of Mew's embrace. Mew leaned his head, then said, "Kiss me first, then I'll let go." You want a kiss? Mew leaned his head even closer until he was only 2 centimeters away from Gulf's face. Close your eyes first. Even though Mew didn't believe Gulf would kiss him, he still closed his eyes. He obeyed what Gulf said. Seeing that Mew had closed his eyes, Gulf immediately lifted his legs and slammed them down, landing right on the top of Mew's instep. Mew jumped up and down, alternately raising both his legs, because of the sudden pain that hit the back of his foot. Haha, Gulf laughed in satisfaction, showing his bunny teeth when he saw Mew in pain because of what he did. Hearing Gulf's laughter, Mew refocused on him. Immediately, Mew stopped jumping and stared intently at Gulf, who was still laughing in satisfaction, not showing his eyes. He was truly mesmerized by seeing Gulf laughing like that. The pain he felt earlier disappeared when he saw the wide smile on Gulf's face. Mew walked quickly towards Gulf, then embraced him again, pushing Gulf backwards against the wall. And suddenly, he kissed Gulf's lips brutally. Gulf was still shocked. He even froze for a few seconds when he realized what was happening. He immediately punched Mew's broad chest, trying to break free from his brutal kiss. Mew ignored him. He tied Gulf's wrists together with one hand, then placed them above Gulf's head so that he couldn't resist his kiss. Gulf's breath began to hitch. Mew continued to lick his tongue and the edge of his lips alternately, not giving Gulf a single second. Gulf tried to turn his face away, and when he succeeded, he pulled back his face so that Mew's kiss broke free. You jerk, are you crazy? Are you trying to kill me? Gulf still couldn't break free from Mew's grip, but luckily the kiss was over. Sorry, are you hurt? Mew tried to touch Gulf's lips, but he slapped his hand away. It hurts. You idiot, let go of my hand. Mew was too excited and aggressive. Seeing Gulf's smile made his heart melt. So he didn't realize that he had hurt Gulf's lips because of his brutal kiss. Even the bottom of Gulf's lip was almost ripped off. Gulf winced in pain from his lip. Mew pulled Gulf's wrist until he fell back on the bed. Then he carried him again like a koala. Be quiet, or do you want me to hurt you again? Mew threatened when Gulf tried to resist being carried. Then Mew sat down on the bed. He opened the drawer and took out a red ointment with a strawberry picture. He opened the ointment, then used his little finger to touch the pink ointment. Then he gently applied the ointment from his little finger to Gulf's injured lip. Sorry. Mew became even gentler in applying the ointment to avoid hurting Gulf. After he finished, Mew blew on Gulf's lip, which was still wet with ointment. Gulf, who had been silent, stared intently at Mew. Since he was a child, no one had treated him as well as Mew except for his mother. He didn't realize that he hadn't blinked once when he saw Mew treating his lip. Mew tilted his head when he realized that Gulf kept looking at him, which made Gulf realize it. He immediately pushed Mew away, then quickly moved to sit next to him, getting out of Mew's lap because of his shyness. Mew, who had fallen asleep on the bed because of Gulf's push, still smirked while looking at Gulf's back. Then He sat up and leaned his head to stare intensely at Gulf, smiling to himself in front of his face. So, the Fox Demon Queen can be embarrassed too? Mew teased. Behind his smile, Gulf, hearing Mew's teasing, rolled his eyes in annoyance. He then roughly pinched Mew's arm, where the injection mark was. "Ag, it hurts." "Gulf," he whined. "Does it hurt?" "Sorry?" Gulf frantically grabbed Mew's arm and immediately blew on the spot where he had pinched him. "Does it still hurt?" Gulf said softly, fanning his hand. Mew smiled widely. He really didn't expect Gulf to be so concerned about him. "You're worried about me, aren't you?" he teased. Behind his wide smile, instantly, Gulf realized what he had done. He glanced at Mew, who had been staring at him with a smile, then patted Mew's arm where he had pinched him. "You idiot! Who's worried about you? Ag, it hurts." Gulf this time. Mew failed to make Gulf act concerned about him. "You jerk! You're a pain in the neck," he said, annoyed and embarrassed by his actions. The queen is angry," Mew teased again, making Gulf's cheeks almost burst from blushing. When he was satisfied with teasing Gulf, Mew picked him up again. When Gulf resisted, Mew said, "You want to keep your promise to Kevin, right?" That made Gulf think twice about resisting. Seeing Gulf remain silent in his arms, Mew walked back into the bathroom to bathe him before meeting Kevin. Once they were in the bathroom, Mew sat Gulf down on the bathroom chair that he had prepared. But when Mew was about to unbutton Gulf's shirt, he swatted Mew's hand away. "I can bathe myself. You can wait for me outside. I want to bathe you," Mew said, while continuing to unbutton Gulf's shirt one by one. "No, maybe. Be quiet. I don't like it when you disobey," Mew said again. Gulf let out a long sigh and finally let Mew bathe him. It was useless to argue. Mew would insist anyway. They ended up bathing together for several dozen minutes. Mew finished bathing Gulf and himself. They were both naked when they got out of the bathroom. Even when Mew carried Gulf like a koala, he wasn't wearing a single piece of clothing. Neither was Gulf. Gulf was still feeling awkward. Even now, he was still lowering his head. But unlike Mew, Mew was just smiling happily because he could bathe together with Gulf. After carrying Gulf like a koala, Mew sat him down on the sofa. Then Mew went to get clothes, which were both white, but Mew's was black. Gulf even thought, doesn't someone as rich as Mew have other fashion styles besides white and black? It's useless to be rich if you don't know fashion, he said to himself. Mew put a white shirt on Gulf and white pants. Then Mew put on his own clothes. Afterwards, he combed Gulf's hair and his own hair. Mew smiled happily, seeing that Gulf was clean. He took some perfume, then sprayed it on Gulf's clothes and his own. "Done," Mew said, satisfied. "Ready to go now?" Gulf nodded. Mew immediately took Gulf's hand, and they walked side by side, out of the room and back to the dining room. In his office, Bourne was once again intently staring at a photo of Gulf. He kept flipping through it while sipping coffee from the mug he was holding. His curiosity was growing. He really wanted to uncover the truth that seemed strange in his mind. Knock, knock. A few seconds later, there was a knock on the door. It was Mean and Hustle, each carrying a mug of coffee in their right hands. Walking towards Bourne's office and sitting on the sofa, Bourne rolled his eyes in annoyance, seeing his two colleagues constantly bothering him during his break time like this. "Oi, you're still looking at that guy's picture. Hazel said after gulping down his coffee. Boren ignored him. He stood up from his seat to grab his jacket and immediately put it on. As he was about to leave the office, Min called out to him. "Where are you going?" He shouted, getting ready to stand up and leave his coffee, which hadn't been brewed at all. "Don't follow me, just going to get some fresh air," Boren said, then left the office. Min, who had been about to follow Boren, sat back down when he heard Boren's refusal. "Always following. Where's he going anyway?" Hazel said again. "How should I know? Why don't you ask him yourself?" Min said, annoyed. "Tell Boren to stop causing trouble before Officer Anton finds out." Officer Anton was their boss. He had forbidden Boren from arresting Mew from the beginning. "Why are you telling me?" Min said, still in a bad mood. "Because every time Boren is about to leave, you're always following him." Min was silent. He brewed his coffee, which was almost cold. "By the way, why is Boren so curious about the guy named Gulf?" Hazel asked. "I don't know. Leave him be. He's like this because his parents died in a very sadistic way." Boren's parents died from stab wounds to the neck twice. There were claw marks on their chests and 2 bullets. To make it even more sadistic, the skin of both of his parents was peeled off, as if the murderer had intentionally done it. "Hi, I'm getting chills thinking about Boren's parents. And the killer hasn't been caught yet." Hazel shuddered, feeling like vomiting, remembering the death of Boren's parents. "That's why, let him do what he wants. Imagine yourself in his shoes. You would do the same thing," Min said, walking through the hallways of every balcony in Mew's house. Gulf kept tilting his head up, looking at Mew, who looked taller than him. "Can you walk slower?" Gulf whispered. Still hurting, Mew slowed down his pace, following Gulf's instructions. "No," Mew chuckled. "If it still hurts, just tell me. I'll treat it again." Gulf was silent. He rolled his eyes in annoyance. He didn't know why he was in a bad mood. He got angry over everything. Seeing that Gulf ignored him, Mew released Gulf's hand and moved to his waist, holding him tightly. Gulf was confused. He stared intently at Mew. "You don't want to hurry, do you?" Mew said, realizing that Gulf was still confused. Gulf was silent. He refocused on what was ahead and let Mew hold his waist. A few minutes later, they arrived in the dining room. As soon as Kevin saw Gulf, he ran towards him and hugged him tightly, and Gulf did the same. "Daddy," he shouted, now in Gulf's arms. "Yes, honey. Sorry for making you wait. Kevin has eaten," Gulf whispered, stroking Kevin's hair. "I have." "Daddy, Kevin wants to go for a walk outside." Gulf was silent. He looked at Mew, who was still beside him. He wasn't sure if he could take Kevin for a walk outside, especially since he had never seen the outside of Mew's house. He didn't know exactly where he was. Gulf focused on Kevin again. "Kevin wants to go for a walk. I really want to." Now, Kevin put his arms around Gulf's neck. "Maybe another time." "No, I want to go now." "But Yes, now. Kevin wants to go for a walk, right?" Mew said cheerfully. Kevin didn't respond. He was still acting spoiled in Gulf's arms. Gulf turned to Mew. "Can I go out?" Mew nodded slowly with a smile on his face. Gulf lowered Kevin from his arms and held his hand. He was still looking at Mew, not believing that he was allowed to go out. Mew, understanding what was on Gulf's mind, took a step closer to him and gently rubbed his hair. "It's okay to go out. But don't stay out too long and don't try to escape from here. I trust you. Gulf smiled slightly. Kevin, annoyed seeing Mew touch his daddy's head, immediately pulled Gulf out of the dining room. Mew exhaled softly, understanding Kevin's nature, which was always like this towards him. Then, he went out to the upper floor, sat on the balcony, and watched Gulf from afar. Boren, who was now in his car, brewing his already cold coffee, he intently stared at the outside of the dorm. Yes, he was currently at the Valencrew dorm. He was watching the area around the dorm. He remembered the time when Gulf had treated him when he was trapped in the dorm. That's where Mew had stared at him sharply. Boren thought, what was the actual relationship between Mew and Gulf? And why did Mew free the hostages after capturing Gulf? Why did Gulf have to be associated with Mew? Boren tried to solve the puzzle. Then, suddenly he remembered something. He took out the data on Gulf's family, which he had always kept with him, and looked at it again. Why isn't there any record of a wife in this data? Boren murmured softly, furrowing his brow. Damn, he said, annoyed. Why didn't I ask Mr. Lee about this? He quickly started his car, then turned the wheel sharply towards Mr. Lee's house. But when he got there, he wasn't greeted warmly by the guards. The guards said that Mr. Lee wasn't home. He was out of the country. Boren sighed again. Then he decided to go back to his office, because he suddenly remembered something he needed to do, but he had forgotten to bring it. As Gulf just opened the door of Mew's house, the air was really very cool. It even seemed that the sun couldn't shine into the house because it was too dense with trees. Moreover, when Gulf looked around Mew's house, it was so vast. Even the yard was almost as large as a football field. But from a distance, he saw a huge wall that prevented him from seeing what was beyond it. He could only see around Mew's house, which was filled with trees and gardens. There was even a fish pond. It was highly unlikely that he could escape from here on his own. Every few dozen meters, there was a security guard standing guard in this house. Security guard? Oh, it's more accurate to call them guards. There were many guards in Mew's house, maybe hundreds or more. Mew's guards were very muscular, even covered in black clothing, but their muscles were still clearly visible. Muscles on their chests, arms, and legs. Every time Gulf passed one of the guards, they kept giving him a warm smile, but he just ignored them. If he had to respond to the smiles of each guard, his teeth would dry out from grinning too much. Back to Kevin, who kept pulling Gulf's hand until they reached the garden. When Gulf and Kevin were about to sit on the garden chair, the guards kept their distance from them. It was probably because Mew told them to. It's too cold here. Wouldn't you be better off just going inside the house? Gulf asked. No, Kevin said gloomily. You know what? Daddy, Kevin is bored. If Daddy doesn't come and meet Kevin, Kevin isn't allowed to leave the room. Kevin isn't allowed to go outside? Yes. I'm so annoyed with the old man inside. Mr. Mew, you mean? Mr.? Kevin said sarcastically. He doesn't deserve to be called Mr. He's old. Hey, don't say that, Kevin. Daddy never taught you to say that. Gulf reprimanded him. Let it be. Kevin doesn't like it when that old man touches Daddy, Kevin said, slightly angry. Honey. Gulf knelt in front of Kevin and held his waist. Why do you say that? Why don't you like Mr. Mew? He said softly. He's not a good person, Kevin replied, still pouting in annoyance. Where did Kevin know that Mr. Mew wasn't a good person? Did he ever act mean to you? Huh? Daddy, Kevin leaned his head closer to Golf's ear, then whispered. Kevin overheard that old man talking to his friends, and Violet was there too, he said. Then Kevin returned to his original position. What did they talk about? Golf asked, trying to believe Kevin. Kevin doesn't want to tell Daddy, because if Kevin tells Daddy, Kevin won't be able to see Daddy again. Kevin isn't lying, right? No, Daddy. Why would Kevin lie? Now, Kevin wants to ask Daddy something. Yes. What does Kevin want to ask? Daddy just needs Kevin to keep him company, right? Daddy doesn't need anyone else besides Kevin, right? Kevin said very seriously. Golf sighed softly, then rubbed Kevin's forehead. Yes, honey. Daddy just needs you. Daddy just needs Kevin. Kevin smiled happily and hugged Golf tightly. Kevin doesn't want Daddy to be hurt, so Daddy has to obey Kevin. Because now, Kevin is going to protect Daddy from bad people out there. Kevin promises Kevin won't make Daddy sad, and Kevin won't let Daddy get hurt at all. Or the person who hurts Daddy will die by Kevin's hand. Golf was shocked to hear Kevin's words, which were completely beyond his expectations. He returned Kevin's hug and said, Thanks, baby. Daddy trusts you, so don't be a naughty boy, okay? Don't disappoint Daddy. Yes, Daddy. Later, when Kevin grows up, Kevin will tell Daddy what Kevin heard from the bad guys. Kevin replied, hugging Golf even tighter. After a few minutes of hugging, Kevin suddenly remembered wanting to play in the garden and by the fish pond with Golf. Golf obeyed him. He wanted to make his only child happy while he was with him. There was no sadness or fear when Golf was with Kevin. Seeing his son smile was enough to make Golf's heart calm, even though deep down he was still hiding the biggest secret. Kevin was the child of a man he hated. Golf ignored that thought in his head. He just wanted to focus on having fun with Kevin. It was very rare that he could play as much as he wanted with Kevin in a small balcony room with himself and his 3 friends. Mew was intently looking out through his dark glasses at Golf and Kevin, who were smiling happily in his garden, and beside him was a voice recorder that he had placed in every area of the garden and the surroundings of the house. Yeah, that's right. Mew could clearly hear what Kevin had said to Golf earlier, and that's why he was intently watching every move of the 7-year-old. No, almost 8-year-old boy. He didn't expect that a child so small could think and filter every word of adults that Kevin heard. So, he really did hear our conversation, Dylan murmured. Mew was silent. He was still too focused on watching Kevin and Golf. If that's true, what if the kid tells Golf? Don't jump to conclusions so quickly, Arson said. Then, should we just stay silent? Dylan said sharply. Mew, do you want your relationship with Golf to end like it did before? No, right. Mew was still silent. So, you have to shut the kid's mouth. Door. Behind Mew's silence, he could still hear Dylan's endless chattering. Unable to bear Dylan's nagging, Mew pushed him with his strength, causing Dylan to fall on top of a vase, making his stomach hit the broken glass. Dylan cried out in pain as he tried to pull the glass shards that were still stuck to his stomach. Blood continued to pour from the wound on his stomach. Du ran toward Dylan to stop the bleeding, using a thick cloth from the drawer. Mew stood up, turned around, and walked towards Dylan. After he reached Dylan, he put both hands into his pockets. Don't try to influence my mind with your filthy words. I can solve my problems myself and he emphasized, I don't need your nonsense at all. Mew said firmly. Dylan remained silent, wincing in pain. Mew was about to walk out of the balcony. Then he turned around again because he remembered something he wanted to say to Dylan. Let this be my business. If you dare to interfere in my business even a little bit, I won't hesitate to kill you with my own two hands, he threatened. Then Mew left the balcony, followed by Arson. Seeing that Mew had left the balcony, Du helped Dylan stand up to treat his wound in the treatment room. Du already knew that Mew would do this to Dylan because he knew his old friend's nature well. Mew didn't like being interrupted while he was talking or daydreaming about the person he liked, and he also didn't like it when someone was presumptuous and rude towards him, especially if they didn't obey his words. Boren, who had just arrived at his office, rushed into his office, ignoring greetings from other colleagues. Once he was in his office, he immediately searched all the drawers and cabinets to find something he was looking for, but he couldn't find it. Then, in the small, ironclad city, he found a stack of papers in the drawer. He quickly took the papers and brought them to his desk. Boren read each paper he took while murmuring, Kevin Jongchevivet, August 25th, 1956. Gulf Kanawut, February 21st, 1896. And now, after reading the paper, he looked at the calendar in his office. It's July 25th, 1964 now. 1 month before Kevin's birthday, he muttered. Suddenly, Min, Hessel, and Lionel entered Boren's office. Boren ignored them, not paying attention to his three friends. Boren, Min called out. Boren turned, finally realizing the presence of his friends when Min called out his name. What are you doing? Min asked again. Boren ignored him. Then he looked at Lionel. Lee, you were looking for the personal data of Gulf's family. Wasn't there any record of Gulf's wife in the data? He asked very seriously. Yes, I wanted to tell you, but you were too focused on looking at that guy's picture. What's wrong? Did you find something? Look, Boren said, making his three friends approach him and look at the papers he had brought. August 25th, 1956, Kevin's birthday. February 21st, 1896, Gulf's birthday. And now it's June 25th, 1964. This is very unreasonable. How come there's no record of a wife or Gulf in the personal data? And oddly enough, Gulf's face always looks the same every year. There must be something wrong. Moreover, the personal data doesn't have a signature from a wife or Gulf's parents. Do you think the same as me? Boren said. You're right. This record must be forged by him. But why? Why are they doing this? Hessel said. Lee, didn't you find Mew's date of birth in his personal data? Boren said. No, the data is not very clear. It only says that he has one child and one wife. What are their names? Boren quickly took a piece of paper to write down Lionel's words. His wife's name is Alicia Alexander, and his child is Aliova. Is there no date of birth for both the mother and the child? There isn't. Photo, there isn't. That's all I could find. Seems like that jerk is hiding his real identity. Boren sighed softly. Then he suddenly remembered something he was thinking about. Wait, Alexander, he mumbled. Then he took his notebook from the drawer in his cubicle. Alexander, isn't that Gulf's father's name? He said, while reading his notes. This is really unreasonable. Is it just a coincidence that their names are the same? Alicia Alexander and Alexander? Hessel said. No, this is not just a coincidence. I once met Alexandre. What? Hassel said, shocked. You met him? Be quiet. I'll tell you later. Min said, Alexander once told me that Gulf had two older siblings. So, you mean that Mew's wife, Alacia, is Gulf's sister? Lionel said. Boren grabbed his jacket again and walked out of the room. Tell the commander to give me an arrest warrant for murder against Alexander, he said. Then Boren quickly ran out of the police station and got into his car, heading to his destination. Lionel, who was instructed by Boren, immediately went to Commander Anton's office, and Hassel, Min helped clean up Boren's messy office. Then they went out to carry out their respective tasks. After Gulf finished playing with Kevin, Violet suddenly came and told Kevin to go back to his room. Actually, Kevin didn't want to obey Violet's instructions, but because of Gulf's persuasion, he had to obey. He went straight back to his room because the sun was about to set. Gulf, feeling lazy to be alone with Violet in the garden, decided to ignore her and walked into Mew's house. But before he took a step, Violet stopped him. Can I talk to you for a bit? Violet said, no. Gulf tried to continue walking, but Violet stopped him again. Just for a moment, she coaxed. Give me 5 minutes to talk to you. Gulf sighed softly. Then he sat back down in the garden, and Violet sat down beside him. Before Violet opened her mouth to speak, she handed Gulf a photo of a woman. Gulf took the photo and looked at the woman in the frame. She's Mew's fiancée. Gulf looked up in shock at Violet's words. Violet chuckled. No, that's not what I mean, she said, smiling slightly. Her name is Alethea. Call her Thea. She was Mew's fiancée hundreds of years ago. Gulf was silent and sighed in relief. For some reason, his heart felt strange when he heard the name of a fiancée. Have you ever heard of World War I in my region? Gulf was silent. Thea died from being killed by a werewolf. Gulf's eyes widened when he heard Violet's explanation. At that time, Mew didn't know that Thea was following him to fight the werewolves. Then Thea died because she accidentally crossed the border between the vampire world and the werewolf world. At that time, Mew was very regretful because he didn't obey Thea's words. Thea once said to Mew before he went to war, she said, if you love me, choose one of these things I say. You choose to go to war, but you lose me. Or you stay with me like this and won't lose me. Which do you choose? And foolishly, Mew chose to leave her and join the war to help his father back then. Because of that silly choice, Mew lost the two people he loved most, his lover and his father. Gulf remained silent, focused on listening to Violet's words. You know, since then, Mew has always tried to kill the werewolf who killed the two people he loved most. But because of his stubborn nature, Mew has always failed to kill that werewolf. Gulf, there's something else I want to tell you, and I'm sure you won't believe my words 100%. Gulf was silent. He looked down, but in his heart, he really wanted to hear what Violet was saying. Your appearance, your personality, even your gaze are almost exactly like Thea. Indeed, if you compare your face, it's very different from Thea's. But if you look at your face for too long, Thea's face is in you. Maybe Mew feels that too. So, you think Mew is approaching me because he thinks I'm Thea? Gulf said, annoyed. Not like that. Stop it. Gulf stood up and stared sharply at Violet. I don't want to hear your nonsense anymore. Don't tell me about Mew, Mew's past, or Thea. Because It has nothing to do with me at all, Gulf said, slightly angry. Then he walked quickly to leave Violet alone in the garden.